It's a pleasure to be with you today. We're doing the Storm King fire analysis. What went right, what went wrong, how management and leadership could be improved. First, we'll talk about what went right. I'm using the standard firefighting orders found at the back of the article to discuss these points. The first one is that knowing what the fire is doing at all times. The Bureau of Land Management misidentified the fire, and this is where the big mistake was. But besides that, McCreadie and Blanco and other firefighters knew what the fire was doing their best to stop it. They did a good job posting lookouts when there's danger. During the review of the blow-up, when the incident occurred and people passed away, all three groups were alerted to the dangers that were happening. However, not all were able to respond properly due to issues we'll see coming up. Be alert, keep calm, think clearly, act decisively. For the most part, this was done by the firefighters. They were able to keep calm and think clearly and act decisively until the final moments when the fire was chasing them up the hill. Again, it's hard to expect anyone to act this way, but for the first few days of firefighting, they did a good job with this. And then identify escape routes and make them known. I think 2 out of the 3 spots they did this. They had 3 lines, and 2 of them led back to safety spots, and 1 of them did not. And so we'll talk about how they did that wrong. Okay, so what they did wrong. Keep informed of weather conditions and forecast. Blanco was informed. He was the incident commander, but he did not keep others informed of the cold weather with the winds coming in or what was going to be happening, how that could affect the fire. He did not inform McCreadie and other leaders about that. Maintain prompt communications with your forces, your supervisor, and adjoining forces. Blanco did not keep prompt communication. Not only that, they were usually on the wrong channel or different channels, the 4 or 5 groups fighting the fire. And so there was not prompt communications with the forces and supervisor. Also, Blanco, most people did not know that he was a supervisor, so he did not do a good job establishing himself as the incident command. And so a lot of confusion resulted because of that. Another thing they did wrong was giving clear instructions and ensure that they're understood. For the most part, the firefighting was, the instructions were clear and people were doing what they were supposed to do until the end. When disaster struck, a lot of people, they weren't dropping tools like they'd been told to do. And they weren't going in the right directions or trying to do things on their own, even though the people that were in the position to help them were telling them to do something else. So these instructions were clear. They might not have been very clear at the time, but they weren't understood. And finally, they need to maintain control of your forces at all times. Like I said before, Blanco, the incident commander, was not in control of his forces. Many did not know that he was the commander at the time, or they didn't know who exactly they were supposed to be reporting to, so this is a failure on his part. There's also a lot of watch-outs that were missed. These are things that firefighters need to look out for danger. The fire was not scouted and sized up at the beginning. The Bureau of Land Management misidentified where the fire was, and so when firefighters first went out, they did not look at the right one or in the right spot and didn't realize how serious it was. Also, this wasn't scouted until July 6th when McCreadie and Blanco went up in a helicopter to actually take a look at the fire and decide what to do. They were unfamiliar with weather and local factors. Most of the firefighters were from out of state, and they didn't know the topography and they didn't know the weather that was coming up. Blanco did. He didn't inform them, and they didn't ask. This was a mistake on their part. No communication link between crew members and supervisor. As we've discussed previously, they were on different radio channels and didn't know who their supervisor was. Constructing line without a safe anchor point. This occurred on the western flank when they built a downhill line towards the fire below. And as we see, going down the bullet points, you shouldn't build a downhill line. That downhill line did not lead to a safe anchor point. It led to a ridge where you had to run uphill to get to it, as you go down, as you keep going down, attempting a frontal assault on a fire, that's what that line was. The western flank line was a frontal assault, and a lot of the firefighters were hesitant about that, and the terrains made it difficult to escape because they'd have to be running back up the hill to a ridge in order to be safe, so there was not an anchor point constructed there. Knowing all of that, these firefighters still willingly built this line. So leadership improvements that could be made. 1, Blanco needed to establish himself as the incident commander. He needed to make sure that all the other leaders of the different groups who showed up knew that he was in charge and that they were reporting to him, potentially even operating on the same radio channel as we go to the next point. they'd been all on the same channel or known what channels each other were on, they would have done a better job at communicating, responding to different situations faster, and could have saved lives. And finally, Blanco was responsible to share weather, topography, and vegetation information. Potentially, there could be a requirement that whoever new shows up knows that they need to ask these questions, and the commander knows that they need to share this information. And it can be a redundancy, but it should be done because it could have saved lives in this scenario. And I'd like to also look at the management issues. There was too many agencies at the beginning to go through, and in confusion about what agencies were in charge of what. The Bureau of Land Management and the United States Forest Service were both kind of in the area. In the Bureau of Land Management, the fire was in their district, and so they had to report to the United States Forest Services, which reports to another United States Forest Service, which reports to National Interagency Forest Service, which can then send firefighting help. This caused a lot of confusion, and there was bad feelings between the agencies about who was in charge and who had the best equipment and who shared it when, and there was a lot of issues there. The Bureau of Land Management also did not adhere to their own policies of sending fires to any fire in 1994 in that summer, because there were so many and they were dealing with droughts and things like that. So they were supposed to send people to fires immediately when they were reported. That did not happen in this case of the Storm King fire. My solutions to those would be either reducing the number of agencies involved in a firefight, by reducing the number of agencies to potentially only one certain agency to be over firefighting. You don't have that interagency competition and bad feelings, and you also have a much faster response time, and people know what the policies are and know how to carry it out and know how to carry out the correct steps, which didn't happen a lot when it came to reporting this fire and sharing information about it, not only from the leaders on the site, but people who were working in the offices. And we need to ensure that policies are carried out. This can happen by having one agency where they're trained to fight fires. So I just want to share those solutions and those issues. This fire could have been dealt with much better if leaders were in contact with who they were supposed to be leading, and agencies were better suited and more streamlined in order to respond to fires. Thank you.